right hand side of the screen there, you got those three numbers. You got the zeros, all those zeros. That'll pop up a second. The bottom number will be the live viewers.
Yep.
Okay, so this should be start streaming if you want to start.
Give us a couple seconds. Give it a minute. Give 60 seconds to go. And then obviously a couple seconds delay.
Yep.
So those guys are going to get it delayed. Should be live now. Can you give me that? Just scroll a bit further down so you can see the bit further, so I can see how many we've got live. Can you just give me that scroll down on that screen there, that one? Just give me a little bit, go other way so I can see the numbers. Okay, so we've got 1. 15. Hey everybody, we're going to kick off our Information Security Management Systems webinar very shortly. We're just allowing people a couple more minutes to come online. Welcome to Best Practice and welcome to the Best Practice Training Academy. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. If you have any technical hitches, we're going to email out the recording of the webinar as soon as we finish buffering at the end of the webinar, so don't panic if your stream drops out. We are uploading to a high-speed connection and we're uploading in high definition. So if you're having issues with quality, if you're having issues with download or stalling, don't be scared to press pause. We'll get ahead of you, but you'll still get the content covered. Get your questions ready and we'll do a Q&A. We've got lots of time after this session. We don't have to stick to the hour, so we will finish the formal presentation over the next hour. And towards the end of that hour, you can hit the bestpracticecertification.com.au website at any time in this presentation. If you're looking at a browser, open another window and go to the bestpracticecertification.com.au website and you can post questions via our live chat function. So we've got Rowan and Beck managing the live chat. So while we're waiting for people to come online, 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Can you just give me a view of that? Okay, we're at 26. What's the time?
2:32.
2:32. We'll go 1 more minute and then we'll kick off. So what we typically have is we'll end up with a 100% view rate within about 24 hours for people that haven't been at the event.
Of course.
So we'll keep tracking that. Okay, thanks for joining everybody. We will 30 more seconds and we'll kick off the formal content and I'll introduce my special guest here who's come to join us here at the Best Practice Training Academy. So welcome. Our numbers are still coming online, so we're slowly growing, so we're just going to wait for a couple more people. We'll get to about half the audience and then we will kick off the formal presentation and formal proceedings. If your feed drops out, don't worry about that. We're going to email out the recording to the webinar. We're broadcasting to a high-speed connection and in high definition. So if you're having issues with quality, you can turn down the quality in your quality settings in your YouTube. So you can go, if you're viewing in the Training Academy, you can go to the bottom of the screen and click View on YouTube. And that's also a great place to post comments. We're going to be taking questions at the end of the session. So if you've got any questions around this or you want to know more information, particularly from our guests here from Content Security, then please get those questions ready. So anything that's sort of top of mind, anything you want to get out of this presentation, a specific burning question, please get that across to our live chat function on our website at bestpracticecertification.com.au or across on any of our social media pages. We are broadcasting live also on our Facebook page. So on the Facebook page, you'll see us sitting on stools with a green screen. So it'll look a bit unusual, but that's the broadcast. You post a comment there, or you can hit the View YouTube button below the link, below the window that you're watching the video. How are we going? Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to introduce Matt Strawn. He's here from Content Security. He's got a huge amount of experience that's been really exciting to learn. He's got 5 years that he's been with Content Security, and it's a great organisation that I was fortunate enough to meet recently with, I met the guys from Content Security recently in a CEO mentoring group that I go to called 2020 Exchange here in Sydney, Australia. So Matt's boss, Lewis, somebody that I spend a bit of time with, mentoring each other, those sorts of things. And so Matt's the operations manager at Content Security. He's been there 5 years. He's had a huge amount of experience in ethical testing of systems, if we use that terminology. But he's on the good side of hacking, shall we say. So we've got some lessons to learn. We've got some great stories to go through today. But prior to going to Content Security, Matt's had a passion for this. He's had a passion for testing. He calls it fun, as a lot of us. Like, I like business, and I think business is fun. All the numbers and the performance and that sort of stuff. And for Matt, ethical testing of systems has been something that's fun for him. So 5 years prior to Content Security, he studied at uni, and then he was picked up straight out of uni. So with 10 years of excellent experience, he's now the operations manager at Content Security. So I want to give a huge shout out to these guys here at Content Security and say thank you. And I'll just go quickly through, for those of you that don't know about best practice, we'll just cover that next slide, Jack. We'll go through that. So for those of you who haven't done one of our webinars before, one thing I would highly recommend as we get into the content is, if you're watching on a mobile device or if you're watching on a PC or a desktop, use the screenshot function. So the screenshot function, either on a mobile device or on a desktop device, is an excellent way to grab a screenshot of what we're talking about here in this webinar. And then you can obviously rely on that for notes. So please grab a notepad to write down questions. This obviously is a bit of a training exercise for you guys, so make sure you get the most out of it and get ready to ask your questions. So I just want to quickly talk about best practice, who we are. Best practice is a conformity assessment body, and over there on the screen behind Matt, over here you'll see our certificates, and that's an example of if someone goes through a process and builds a management system around ISO, then they can get a quality, a safety, environment, or in this case, an information security certification. So right over there in the corner, the black logo that you'll see on that certificate is all about information security and ISO 27001. Now, in this particular session, we're not going to go into the nuts and bolts of ISO 27001. I will cover that separately in another webinar. We'll post a follow-up to this, and we'll go through the how-tos of ISO 27001. Matt has a counterpart at Content Security, Manny. Manny's going to come in and speak about 27001, how to execute that system and how to implement it. What we hear about today is to talk about some of the fun stuff. So what's recently been happening globally, very timely that we promoted this. So I'll get out of the way in a second, but I want you to just quickly be aware there's lots happening here at Best Practice on Instagram, lots happening on YouTube. The YouTube channel has about 3 new videos a week that are about 3 minutes long. It's got a fun vlog, so you can see behind the scenes, you can see what's going on. So I'm going to hand over to Matt here, Matt Strawn from Content Security. Have a look for him on LinkedIn. I assume you've got a LinkedIn profile?
I do, yes.
Perfect, excellent. So we'll get his LinkedIn profile out with the follow-up email so you can connect with him on LinkedIn. It's not about this being a veiled sales pitch. These guys are experts in their field. They are a long-standing organisation that's been around almost 30 years in this content security space. It's run by a great bunch of guys that are absolutely passionate about helping your organisation with this particular thing. So I'm going to say that if you guys need help, or even if you think you need help, reach out to these guys, because they'll give you a bunch of advice over the phone or via email or via their website, and then you guys can scope out if there's a project that they can help with. And then if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to learn about that in a second, you know who to call. That's Content Security, and that's certainly why we've built this great relationship with this organisation. So Matt, I'm going to get out of the way. You stay right there. Jack's going to play with the screen. We've got Jack here in the room, and we've got people outside watching, so you can watch there on your mobile device. If the feed drops out, we'll send out the recording. It won't be an issue at this end, but if you have issues, if the sound stops, any of that sort of stuff, just reach out to us. So questions to live chat. I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. There's a live Facebook feed, and also the live chat on the Best Practice website. So as content comes up that Matt's going to talk about, jump onto the bestpracticecertification.com.au website. Little live chat window pops up. Just post your question. Or if you're watching in the Training Academy, there's a View on YouTube button down the bottom. You can click on that button, which is down the button here. It says View on YouTube, and you can post comments on the YouTube feed, and we'll get the marketing girls to come in with those questions, and we'll answer them at the end. So thanks for joining us, Matt.
Brilliant.
Good luck. I'll see you soon.
This should be a pretty interesting presentation actually. So what I'm presenting on is a story of how these tools, written by the NSA, written by the US government, got into the hands of common criminals and started being used to encrypt people's hard drives and sensitive files, photos. Organizations have been brought down by this software. Tools written by the NSA came into the hands of common criminals. So let's go. I'll just give you a bit of a quick overview so you can see what timeline I'm talking about here. So in 2015, right at the beginning, there's a group named the Equation Group that was brought up by the antivirus company Kaspersky, the Russian antivirus company. Fast forward about a year and a half, there was this shadowy group called the Shadow Brokers that said, we've got their files, we're going to offer them for money, for a big auction. Microsoft, after some very unprecedented stalling of their patch cycle, released this patch saying critical, 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 and that was in March of this year. April this year, the Shadow Brokers, the shadowy group that I was talking about before, wrote a message yelling at Donald Trump and said, here's the auction file, key. May, this ransomware called WannaCry was released that incorporated one of the tools released by Shadow Brokers. And that caused huge amounts of chaos across the world. It was almost unprecedented for how much chaos caused by a single piece of malware. And then in June, just a few days ago, another virus similar to WannaCry, but a level up called Pecha, was released and hit Australian companies. So let's get started. Introducing the Equation Group. The Equation Group, we know, has been operating since 2001 or earlier. And it's named for their love of custom cryptography, which is very unusual. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we know that it has links to the NSA. The initial links brought up by Kaspersky were that it used the same vulnerabilities as another piece of malware that we knew was from the NSA called Stuxnet. It was a similar tool to what was already leaked in this almost like a catalog given from the NSA to their partners in other countries. Time stamps and times in the source code of the malware were in the US, it was 9 to 5 in the US. So that kind of gave you a key that it wasn't just you've got people in the US, but it was people doing it for their day-to-day job. You had code names, which we had reference to the NSA. And finally, the biggest gimme, you've got US adversaries being attacked. This malware used by Equation Group had very specific targeting. And that in itself is unusual. See, this malware, when it saw there was an US ally, so for instance, Jordan was a politically sensitive US ally at the time, it would find out and automatically delete itself. Automatically close and hide all signs that it had been on that system. Now, what Kaspersky did was very clever. It's what they commonly do when finding new pieces of malware. See, the malware has to have a way of talking back to whoever's running it. It's useless putting a piece of malware on a system, especially when you're doing some nation-state level spying, without having some mechanism for getting the information back. So what they did was they found how the malware talked back to the NSA and they intercepted that traffic. And what was curious about that was they found lots of Windows calls back, which they already knew about. They knew that they had collected Windows samples. They also found Mac OS X called back. So your MacBooks could also call back, and they were going, this is a bit odd. They never collected any OS X samples, any Apple Mac samples. And so they knew there was this whole realm of malware that they just did not have. And finally, this is something, I'm going to get a bit technical here, but it's something that was very striking about this. See, what this malware did was when it infected a machine, it went into the hard drive of that machine and infected the software on the hard drive. So not not the data on the hard drive, but the software on the hard drive itself. So what happened was, if you found you're infected with this malware and you reinstalled everything, you reinstalled Windows, you reinstalled Mac if you have a Mac, then this malware would still be on the machine. So this is a level above anything Kaspersky had ever seen. This was very advanced stuff that the NSA was using. Last year, there was a leak from the CIA. This was posted on WikiLeaks, and part of this leak, it talked about the equation group. What did the equation group do wrong, and how can we avoid doing the same? I've got a couple of interesting comments from that. If you can go to the next slide. So the first one is talking about custom cryptography. Standard RC5, but custom implementation. The custom crypto is more of NSA falling to its own internal policies and standards, which came about in response to prior problems. In the past, there were crypto issues where people used 0 as initialization vectors and other misconfigurations. As a result, the NSA crypto guys blessed one library, it's a correct implementation, and everyone was told to use that. Unfortunately, this implementation used the pre-computed negative versions of constants instead of the positive constants in the reference implementation. I'll just explain that. So, cryptography is very hard. In fact, when we were talking about my past, I started reading this book called Applied Cryptography, and one of the first pages of this book said, custom cryptography is very hard. If you want to write your own crypto algorithm, just don't do it. I'm going to explain all of these crypto algorithms, but don't write your own one. So, just the fact that this piece of malware, these pieces of malware, used custom cryptography was in itself really strange. Really, really unusual. But, what's more, see, this custom cryptography acted like a fingerprint. Because this little piece of custom cryptography was so strange, so unique, but it was used by all these pieces of malware, Kaspersky were able to link together all of these pieces of malware, same as any sort of MO on your forensics crime scene. And so, go to the next slide. This is back to the CIA. The way I was looking at it, the equation group isn't the single group Kaspersky imagines it to be. It is the tools that seem to make the encompassing group. When we answer, who is the equation group, it isn't a single entity. The better question would be, who uses the equation group tools? And this is the last point when we're talking about the equation group that I'd like to bring home. The equation group, as reported by Kaspersky, wasn't just a group of people sitting in the same room, saying hi, checking in at being in the morning and checking out in the evening. What it was a collection of software. Software used to hack into other systems. Software that included vulnerabilities in other systems that could be used to covertly access the most secure locations and most secure systems in other countries. So when we're talking about the equation group, we aren't talking about a single group, we're talking about these tools that they used. Now, introducing the shadow brokers. Fast forward a year and 6 months. Equation Group Cyber Weapons Auction Invitation. Attention governments, sponsors of cyber warfare and those who profit from it. How much you pay for enemy cyber weapons, not malware you find in networks. Both sides, RAT plus LP's full state-sponsored toolset. We find cyber weapons made by creators of Stuxnet, Dooku, Flame, Kaspersky calls Equation Group. We follow Equation Group traffic. We find Equation Group source range. We hack Equation Group. We find many Equation Group cyber weapons. You see pictures? We give you some Equation Group files free, you see. This is good proof, no? You enjoy. You break many things. You find many intrusions. You write many words. But most of all, we are auctioning the best files. This was the sale of the century. You had a group coming on saying that we have the NSA's toolkits, the NSA's vulnerabilities, and saying, we are auctioning this to the highest bidder. Let's look at the auction files. So two zip files that they released. The first one had exploits for routers and firewalls used by a lot of different organizations. This is legitimate stuff. This file they gave out for free had exploits for just to break into most organizations in the world. Just that file, people were estimating the value if they sold it on the underground market as $250,000 to $1 million. Just this file they gave out for free. But there was another file, and that file was encrypted with a key that the shadow brokers didn't give out. But look forward, just over a month later, the auction was not going well. People's is having interest in free files, but People's is no interest in the equation group auction. The shadow brokers is thinking this is information communications problem. You people are thinking as shadow brokers. How you sell secrets, making most money quickly, least amount effort, maintaining anonymity. You've been making a suggestion for the equation group auction. The shadow brokers is being interested in fame, not being interested in fame. The shadow brokers is selling to be making money, and you peoples is never hearing from the shadow brokers again. The shadow brokers auction is designed to make benefit shadow brokers. So how much did they get in this initial month and a bit? Just over $1,000. So what they had was, this is the rules of the auction. They had an account, and the person or group who put the most money in this account won the free tools, won that password. But no one liked those rules, so no one put in any money. And so 15th of October last year asked for 10,000 Bitcoin instead. And before I go on, so the shadow brokers is, you can look on Twitter for their stuff. You can look on Medium. They've got accounts on a whole lot of different sites. They're very easy to find on the internet. But don't look at it from work. They are offensive, they're politically incorrect, they are everything that is wrong with the dark corners of the internet. And so when they were asking for 10,000 Bitcoin instead, they posted Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch erotic fiction at the same time. In Halloween dump, we call it, 30th of October last year, they ranted about corruption and capitalism, a very long rant. And at the end of it, they dumped 300 folders of evidence of the NSA hacking their allies. Hacking Russia, China, India, but Sweden, for example, was also, they had evidence of the NSA hacking them. And at the end of this, they promised not to use bad language anymore. Finally, December last year, they decided to split it all up. So they said they were going to start selling individual exploits. They dumped screenshots of some of the exploits they had. And they thought, well, this big bang approach wasn't working, so we're just going to try and see if we can get a lot more for all the individual parts of what they had. And then New Year's Day, beginning of this year, they went dark. Message finale, the shadow brokers closed, going dark. So long, farewell peoples. The shadow brokers going dark, making exits. Continuing is being much risk and not many Bitcoins. The shadow brokers is deleting accounts and moving on, so don't be trying communications. Despite theories, it always being about Bitcoins for the shadow brokers. Free dumps and political talk was for marketing attention. There being no Bitcoins in free dumps and giveaways. You're being disappointed? Nobody is being more disappointed than the shadow brokers. But the shadow brokers is leaving the door open. And then they put in a donation accounts that you could just donate to the shadow brokers if you like their anarchistic ways. The shadow brokers, at the beginning of this year, we thought, well, a bit of a flash. It was interesting. It was certainly entertaining. The vulnerabilities that were identified in their first release were really critical vulnerabilities. And the organizations that it affected were prompt in releasing fixes. So Cisco released fixes, TopSec, Juniper, they all released fixes for those vulnerabilities. So we thought, there it is, it's over. And then in March this year, February of this year, sorry, something very odd happened. Something a bit unprecedented, actually. So Microsoft, if you don't know, if you know in the system administration space, they have what they call Patch Tuesday. What they do is they release security updates for all of their operating systems and software. So the same Patch Tuesday, the second Tuesday of every month, they release patches for Windows, for Office, for their web service software, for all the rest of their service software. And that's all bundled up. So the intention of this is that system administrators have some routine. Systems administrators know to book the next day, we're going to look at these patches, we're going to test these patches, we're going to release these patches. But February this year, they did something very odd. They cancelled their Patch Tuesday. This is a routine that had gone on for a previous decade. It's not as if there hadn't been some delays and interruptions. There have been times where, for instance, the build systems, the systems they use to generate these patches, failed just coincidentally around Patch Tuesday. But they cancelled it without notice or without saying exactly why. And then in March, they released a big Patch Tuesday. And particularly, MS17010 was the patch that they released. And that was critical for everything. And they released it. They didn't really give much commentary at the time. They just said, this is a critical patch, you should apply it. And then, in April this year, just a few months ago, the shadow brokers, after just over 4 months of silence, released this next message. And it began, "Dear Donald Trump, respectfully," what did actually censor this, by the way. It's uncensored in the original message, so again, don't look at this from work. "The shadow brokers voted for you. The shadow brokers supports you. The shadow brokers is losing faith in you. Mr. Trump helping the shadow brokers, helping you, is appearing you are abandoning your base, the movement, and the peoples who are getting you elected." This is a long message. I'm just going to skip to the end. "The shadow brokers wishes we can be doing more, but revolutions/civil wars taking money, time, and people. The shadow brokers is having little of each, as our auction was an apparent failure. Be considering this our form of protest. The password for the auction file is," and there it is. They released the password for the auction file that they gave out 6 months beforehand. And everyone was going, what was this? And so instantly, the entire security industry looked at this auction file and they found these exploits, this group of programs that you can use to hack into other systems. These almost point and click programs which you can say, I would like to hack into this system. And in particular, there was this group of exploits that are nicknamed the Eternal exploits based on the code names that the NSA used. Eternal Romance, Eternal Blue, Eternal Champion. These Eternal exploits were vulnerabilities in Microsoft file sharing. So if you look at Network Neighborhood, it was a vulnerability in that. And it used Network Neighborhood to completely take control over your computer. It affects all versions of Windows, right from Windows XP to the very latest Windows Server products. And it's remote code execution. It's a full compromise of the entire system. Suddenly, you had organizations that hadn't yet applied that March patch. They were completely vulnerable to compromise. But this was released in April, the auction file password. Microsoft patched these vulnerabilities in March. So the organizations that were quick on the uptake, that were regularly patching, they were secure against this exploit. But the organizations that didn't apply those Microsoft security updates, they were completely open. And then, if we go to just a bit over a month ago, there was WannaCry released. Now, let's look at before WannaCry, because WannaCry, although it made the most noise, it wasn't actually the first piece of malware to use these NSA exploits. I'll just describe this previous piece of malware. So this previous piece of malware used Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining, effectively, you've got this digital currency where if you use lots of cycles assisting the Bitcoin economy, then they reward you with money. And so what this piece of malware did was used Bitcoin and hacked into all these systems, made its way around the world, and started using these systems to do this Bitcoin mining and to make money off that. But that was silent. No one knew what was happening. There might have been organizations that got very, very large electricity bills, but those organizations weren't impacted as much. So then, in May of this year, if we go to the next slide, we had WannaCry. WannaCry did. So you had all of these people going to their organizations. It was Friday night, Australian time, Saturday morning, Australian time, Friday during the day for most of the rest of the world. And WannaCry was released. WannaCry went around the world using this NSA exploit, using software written by the NSA to hack into other systems. Within a day, it affected 230,000 systems. And what it did was it got all the files on these systems and encrypted them. This red screen that you can see right behind me said a message saying, "We have your files for ransom. If you pay us this amount of money, about $300, I believe $400 Australian, then we will give you the decryption keys. There's no other way of getting your files back unless you pay us this money." Now, for people, just normal people, you have people losing their sensitive information, losing their sensitive files, their photos that they have potentially for years. But then you had organizations who were crippled because suddenly the files that they needed to do what they're meaning to do, they couldn't access anymore. Sorry if we go back for a second. WannaCry was so prevalent that one person connected, this is from Twitter, one person connected their system to the internet, and within 3 minutes, that system was infected with WannaCry. Because what WannaCry did, if it infected one computer, it scanned all of the rest of the internet and the organizations. If one person in an organization ran WannaCry, it would scan the entire organization. And so not just one system in the organization would get infected, but if they hadn't patched, every system. You had complete denial of service of the information systems of that organization. And WannaCry, it definitely made the news because this hit everywhere. Funnily enough, Russia was the most affected country, but you had Spain no longer being able to run railroads. You had hospitals and ambulance services in the UK being affected. You had organizations all around the world. And funnily enough, Australia, I don't know why, we surprisingly got off relatively scot-free. If we go to the next slide, the most severe thing about WannaCry, and the thing that really kind of hits hard for a lot of security professionals, is in England and Scotland in particular. Because in England and Scotland, you had NHS trusts, their hospitals, health boards, they were heavily hit by WannaCry. And the main simple reason, they had Windows XP. Windows XP is unsupported by Microsoft. Windows XP, because it was unsupported by Microsoft, didn't have that patch released for the Eternal Blue exploit. And so all of these hospitals with legacy equipment, with these medical devices that have been working fine for the past 15 years with Windows XP installed, suddenly were no longer able to be used. Ambulance services were shut down in Scotland. And this is where it gets serious and very confronting for security professionals, because most probably people died. Most probably because these hospitals were shut down and people didn't get the health services that they need, people probably died from this. Microsoft, after WannaCry, I just mentioned Windows XP, they did actually, despite saying they wouldn't, they did actually release patches for Windows XP and Server 2003. Again, unprecedented by Microsoft. They hadn't before. In fact, you needed to pay a few $100,000 for a support agreement for Microsoft to gain access to their Windows XP patches. From then, there has actually been one other case where Microsoft has, again, with only that precedent of the Eternal Blue exploit, released another patch for Windows XP. Because so many systems still use Windows XP, it's a serious issue. So how much did WannaCry make? We can see Bitcoin's public. Bitcoin transactions, they've got a Bitcoin transaction log. We can see it was just over 80 grand. For all of that chaos, for all of that, for the fact that people potentially died from this, that's how much it made. Just over $80,000. It's pretty incredible to think about it, but that's what happened. Let's just look at the decryption of WannaCry, because WannaCry, one of the striking things about WannaCry is that, as far as we can tell, it wasn't all that well written. We don't think that they had the capability of decrypting the files that they encrypted. So if it was encrypted with WannaCry, then it wasn't going to be decrypted. There were a few ways that, for instance, it had this demo decrypt function, which was just a mirage. All they did was they didn't encrypt some files, and then when you said, oh, I would like you to prove that I can decrypt some files, you just pressed a button, and they'll say, oh, look at here, there's the files that's we can decrypt. But that was just an illusion. That was just them saying, yep, it was theatre. There were also a few technical ways that you could decrypt things. Some files could be undeleted, didn't delete files properly after it encrypted it. There are also, ironically, some crypto vulnerabilities in Windows XP, which could potentially be used to gain access to original files. But the striking thing is, there were no cases where someone paid the ransom and had the decryption occur. So let's go ahead to just a week ago. WannaCry was pretty severe, but then, since then, ransomware makers have upped the game. And there was a release of a piece of malware called Pecha, which you might have looked at in the news last week. Pecha, although I should explain Pecha, this piece of malware has a bunch of different names. Ironically, Pecha and not Pecha are two of its names. The main reason why people called it Pecha was they thought it was linked to this previous piece of malware called Pecha. So Googling Pecha is often a bit tricky. But this piece of malware that was released last week was WannaCry with a few new tricks. So when I talked about WannaCry infecting one user and then scanning all the rest of the internal network to try and find other systems that it could infect and eventually trying to compromise the entire thing, Pecha had this rather severe new trick. So what it did was, on top of that, it did that as well, but on top of that, it tried to see what else the user could access. It tried to see if there are any other saved passwords on machines. And on any machines that it infected, it would then, again, try and see if there's any more passwords. It would end up acting like dominoes. You would have one user click on it, and then it would infect someone with few more privileges, with access to more systems. And then eventually, it might infect someone with access to all of the systems. A friend of a friend that was at one of the companies that was hit by Pecha. And the descriptions that I've heard were quite dramatic, where suddenly just every system in the entire building restarted and displayed this screen that, again, is just above my head. And suddenly you had all these systems locked out. So if we go to the next slide, because I mentioned WannaCry was not hit very hard by this, Australia was not hit very hard by WannaCry, but it was hit quite hard by Pecha. So for instance, Cadbury Chocolate in Tasmania shut down their services. They couldn't run because they didn't have any information systems. All of their information systems were encrypted, restarted, and locked down. We had the international company TNT that was compromised by this system. They could not send packages around. TNT, originally an Australian company based in Australia, suddenly they could not do what they needed to do. And finally, DLA Piper, people who worked for DLA Piper got a text message, and that text message said, sorry, you cannot come to work. Our information systems are down. You can't come to work. And don't, whatever you do, connect your system to our network. That's how severe it got there. These organizations suddenly couldn't run. Now, if you think about it, how long could your organization run without your information systems? Nowadays, most organizations, you would say it's within minutes that suddenly the people who work for them could no longer do their jobs. So what can we do? I've listed, if you'd like to take a screenshot for later, the technical fixes. So you can apply that patch that I was talking about before. You can disable the file sharing that this exploit used. You can update your AV, of course, endpoint protection. I always like talking about information security awareness training, because if users know not to click on files that are emailed to them, then that can stop initial infection as well. Of course, vulnerability management, making sure, again, a key component of ISO 27001, can be used to make sure that future vulnerabilities that come out are properly protected against. You can make sure that you have that routine of Patch Tuesday going. Windows XP, try and get rid of it. And finally, there's other standard security controls. I won't be fatalistic about these things. I've been talking about the NSA toolset that can be used to just hack in systems. But the standard set of security controls, especially applying ISO 27001 style security controls, are effective against these things. Sorry, I'll just have a sip of water because my voice is starting to go. But I've talked about these technical controls, these technical things that you can do, that your systems administrators can do to stop this style of attack. But whenever you find something wrong with your environment, you go look at this root cause. What does not having this patch indicate? What does having this security issue, a user running ransomware in your environment, anything happening, what does that mean? Because as part of this, we've been talking about ISO 27001 that was introduced at the start. ISO 27001 looks at things from a top level. Now, it tries the plan, do, check, act principle. So whenever you find any security issues in your environment, you go take a step back. You go try and not focus on that security issue, because often that security issue is a symptom of the greater problem. You'll go try and look at the root cause and how you can address this from an organizational way. But last thing, I'll leave you with this, because it is getting worse. Shadow Brokers, just a couple of months ago, released this. In June, the Shadow Brokers is announcing the Shadow Brokers Data Dump of the Month service. The Shadow Brokers is launching new monthly subscription model. It's being like Wine of the Month Club. Each month, people can be paying membership fee, then getting members-only data dump each month. What members doing with data after is up to members. See, I've taken you through a story of how these NSA nation-state tools were written, were used to attack what they intended to attack, were used to attack systems in Russia or their enemies. But then they were released. And there's no going back from that. No one's going to find every piece of software that was dumped in that auction file and delete them. Once it's released, it's released. And this is not going to be the first time that this is going to happen. Unfortunately, the security game is just never-endingly changing. Everything is stepping up. See, when I started, and talking about over a decade ago, we talked about these nation-state style attacks, about the NSA having this master hacking capability, and scoffing a little bit, saying that's not going to affect us, scoffing as working for our clients, saying, well, there's these vulnerabilities, but they require all of this this work. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to be compromised by them. But that's not the case anymore. Suddenly we've got these tools written by the NSA, written by spy networks. You've got tools from Russia being released, and China, or even people collecting what they've found in their systems and readapting and reusing them. Suddenly we've got these tools being used by common criminals to get $80,000 but cause chaos across the world. So it's only going to get worse. This is only going to happen more and more. So it pays to start taking a forward step on your security, because those standard security controls, ISO 27001, I don't want to be fatalistic about this. These security controls do work, but you've got to make sure that you apply them and you start attacking security now. Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Can you give us a background slide back?
Yeah.
No, thank you, Simon. So thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a couple of people waiting to take questions. So it's been a very technical, obviously a very technical presentation.
Apologies for that.
No, it's been absolutely
bit of a
fantastic.
technical guy.
That's been absolutely fantastic. So I think while we're waiting for some questions, I've obviously got some questions that we can go through.
Go ahead.
And talk about. So if we talk about, we've talked about your organisation, my organisation, and the vast majority of people out there in the marketplace. We've got a couple of things happening, in the office if we picture the office environment or factory environment. So we've got mobile devices, we've got obviously hardware devices. This office is a little bit unusual because there's no servers and there's no hard components to the network, but most offices would still probably have a network and a server and stuff on the server. Someone like Cadbury's that you talked about, they've potentially got a whole bunch of equipment that's running on a SCADA system and that sort of stuff. So, and there's a few movies starting to come out with, people starting to control some of the self-driving cars and those sorts of things. So those sorts of threats. So from your perspective, like basic 101. So there's a number of people watching this webinar. For them, just personally and starting for you and me, what are sort of the day-to-day things that you do yourself in your own sort of, on your way to work, at home, that sort of thing, to protect yourself at this point in time?
For myself, it's about making sure you keep everything up to date. It's about making sure you've got antivirus and your standard security controls. From an organisational point of view, you've got to attack it for a full organisation.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
For yourself, a lot of the security comes through just how you think about things. Do you have strong passwords or a password manager? I personally use LastPass as my password manager. That makes sure you have strong passwords. Do you leave your passwords written down? If you do, then someone could just come across and look at your shoulder. Do you change those passwords regularly? Do you make sure that you don't log into something so you go to some computer in an
Yep.
internet cafe,
Understand?
do you log into your systems there? Do you
Okay.
log into your bank account there? Because
Yep.
how do you know that's computers?
Free, yeah, right.
Free.
Okay, that's
So-
okay, clear, yeah, okay.
That's
Excellent.
Part of it is just
Yeah.
about a mindset that this is possible,
Yep.
and about just doing nothing special,
Mm-hmm.
but just doing common sense stuff.
Yeah, so you're not going to work, you're in an international city, for example, you're not going to walk down a dark alleyway because you're going to feel unsafe.
Exactly.
But people are being a little bit naive. You know,
Yeah.
they're not having passwords, they're not having PIN codes. You know, PIN code on your mobile device that's got 6 digits, not 4,
Mhm.
for example. So, if you've got a mobile device and that mobile device has got stuff on it, pictures, apps for your internet banking, those sorts of things, then 6-digit, PIN code for your mobile device. And then
Yeah.
obviously the second part is, you're not going to walk down a dark alley because it's unsafe. So you don't open those systems unless you're confident in the security of that particular device.
Well, think about this. I mean, if you went to an internet cafe
Yep.
and you said to that guy, "Oh, here's my wallet. Could you please grab my credit card, withdraw money for me?"
Yep.
You wouldn't do it.
No,
You'll
that's
be
exactly
thinking,
right, yeah.
"No, no."
Exactly right. Yeah.
Could you please just
Good
access
analogy.
my
Yeah.
account?
Yeah.
But effectively, what we're doing when
Yeah.
we're logging in with their systems
Yeah.
is we're doing just that.
Yep.
If we don't control the system,
Perfect.
then
Fantastic.
someone else does.
Yeah. So then I guess the point that I'm getting towards is we're all individuals, and the individuals form the organisation. So what you guys have got there is you've got a group of individuals, and you take exactly the same approach that we just talked about, and you apply that at scale. So obviously you can have blanket policies and procedures about how you do things. And we've been sitting outside this webinar discussing some of the security protocols of different organisations and how they can have a blanket approach. I think the other important point to make around, we've heard about the stories today, is about segmentation. So, and so by having segmentation of information, if it's cloud-based or if it's it's hardware-based on your side, the segmentation is an important aspect, so that if someone can get into one part, they can't get into all parts.
Yeah.
And that will be the same as your office. Different security passes for the different parts of the office, different usernames and passwords for different parts of your network, depending on how mission critical the information is that you're holding.
Well, you don't give everyone access to your company safe.
That's exactly right. Yeah, perfect. So,
Why would you give access
good
to
example.
crown
Good
jewels in
example,
your company
yeah.
networks?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what you guys do at Content Security, what is what's your sort of, particular? I know there's different teams
Mhm.
at Content Security. Let's just talk about your team at this point in time. So what would be the first reason that a client would approach your team? What would they need help with?
Well, where I come from is the penetration testing side of the business. And
Yeah.
so what we do is we come in and effectively attempt to hack
Yep.
the network,
Yep.
attempt to hack the website or
Mhm. Yep.
or your what you've got connected to the internet.
Yep.
And although it's not really a simulation as such, this is more like an audit.
Yep.
Because nowadays information systems are incredibly complex things.
Mhm.
Incredibly complex. It's almost impossible
Yep.
to put one together
Yep.
without stuffing up in some way, without
Yeah, right.
opening
Yeah,
yourself
yeah,
to
yeah.
some risk. And that's not really the fault of the people who set it up.
No, yep.
Similarly to how you've got the airplane safety checklists,
Mhm, mhm,
just because one of them fails doesn't really mean the engineer that put it together
Yeah, it was wrong.
just
yeah, understand.
did something wrong.
Yep. Yep.
There's a reason why you have those safety checklists.
Mhm.
So similar, we come in, we try and find those security vulnerabilities that someone else could use,
Yep.
and then we give you information
Yep.
so that, and the follow-up so that you can fix those vulnerabilities.
Perfect. So that fits into ISO 27001 in the like the continual improvement aspect, which is the constantly checking. So
Yes.
27001 is talking about, do you do penetration testing, do you threat testing, and I think the step before that, which we didn't really get into because we jumped to a middle part of the standard, is talking about, well, what have you got, why do you have it? Don't have it is probably the is probably the critical thing.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, for us doing penetration testing, for instance, a lot of organizations say, oh, you've done scans across all of our network. The first step for penetration testing is trying to understand, or for hacking, is trying to understand what's there.
That's right.
And we often have organizations say, you've got a network map. We were wanting to find a network map.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so these organizations
Yep.
didn't understand what they had.
Yeah. Good point. So I think so from a content security perspective, so there's obviously there's the first pass would be an audit. Is there a service where you guys sort of do ongoing recommendations?
Yeah. So we can effectively be the full outsourced security model.
Yep. Okay.
We've got penetration testing, instant response in the security assurance team. We've got helping you with the governance risk compliance side as well. There's also what we call enhanced security services, where we can put integrates different solutions into your environment. And so this includes things like firewalls, the right up to these systems that capture all traffic and try and monitor absolutely everything that goes on in the network. So from the simple basics right up to
perfect.
the advanced government style nation state stuff.
So we're coming to the end of our time allocated for this webinar, and I appreciate everybody's time coming to see us here at Best Practice and listening to content security. We've just been talking outside the webinar. There's been a couple of people meeting and watching obviously the webinar from here in the Best Practice head office. We were talking about maybe what we might do is do a backup to this particular webinar, so watch out. We'll invite you guys all back to talk about, we've talked about this, obviously this intro, it's been quite technical. We might talk about some more practical tips and tricks. We've got an expert at content security around structuring the management system. So what we might try and do, I'm thinking on the fly, and this is a live event, is how we can help you guys some more, because we are really, I guess what we here at Best Practice is we're really passionate about keeping businesses simple, keeping businesses fast, efficient, and minimising bureaucracy. And certainly when we talk about data security and information security, we can get really complicated very quickly. And that's probably the thing for us. We're passionate about having organisations free to move about the environment, with really their customers being really confident in what they do and inspired to buy from them. And that's what everything we do here at Best Practice, all these little things that we're doing, it's all driven around that passion that we've got for business improvement. So I'm thinking out loud about how we can help you guys in a little bit more detail. So we'll organise something in terms of some practical tips. I want you guys to ask some questions. So if there's any feedback on this particular webinar, it's been really successful. There's been no technical hitches for this particular one. We've got Jack here on the console managing everything, and he's done a great job. So I want to say thank you to Jack. Thanks to Matt for joining us here at Best Practice. Now there's a bunch of stuff happening on our YouTube channel, and specifically the Talking Business segments. So if you haven't seen the Talking Business segments in the YouTube playlist over on the Best Practice Certification YouTube channel, jump across and have a look at the Talking Business sections. What we're going to do, we're going to get these guys in. We're going to do a 1-hour session on Talking Business, and we'll talk about practical tips and tricks. We'll do another webinar for you guys. I'll try and organise that webinar for about 2 months from now. So I'm giving you guys 8 weeks notice to watch out for that. There will be some YouTube videos coming out. We'll try and get some more content out from Content Security. We'll get you a bunch of links to some of this stuff in terms of where to go and get further information. We'll get that out in the email to you, just when we say thank you to everybody for watching, and the recording. So you've got the recording coming out, you've got the tips and tricks, but some feedback would be absolutely fantastic. You guys are all out there in the internet and at your desks and your workstations. So anything we can do to improve the experience for you so that you guys feel more passionate and more inspired about what we're doing. So Best Practice here, I can't say it enough, it's all about helping you guys to be able to be free from complexity and bureaucracy, so your businesses are simple and you can grow them and that they're really profitable. Part of this process about profitability, if you just want to talk about that right now, if we can avoid this stuff happening by being preventative, we can budget for preventative maintenance, which means we can avoid the negative emergencies, which is the shit that costs us money, which is why many businesses don't make profit, which is really exciting. So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate your time. I'm sure everybody does out there too. Have we got any questions? We have got a question, so I'm just going to answer this one. How do you determine if a potential supplier, etc., who might need access to your systems is safe enough, like cloud services or system operators?
Well, it's about doing your due diligence. So for instance, we do what we call third-party supplier audits, and that involves effectively asking them a bunch of questions saying, do you have this control? The first one is, are you ISO 27001 certified, of course. And making sure they're safe. Now, that's not, you don't have to go to the nth degree there. This is not they have to have the equivalent of Fort Knox for their security. It is just applying some sensible security controls to make sure that data held with them is as good as you would do it yourself, as good as you want it, as good as aligns to your business requirements. Now, most organizations, most suppliers, especially if you do your due diligence at the start, they're happy to ask you questions about information security. Suppliers nowadays are just used to answering this all the time. We deal with a lot of suppliers. They say we have so many checklists to fill in, but that's okay because they have to make sure that the data is safe. And so just make sure you've got the due diligence when engaging with them in the first place. Make sure that due diligence includes an SLA, a service level agreement, such that it says if there is a security incident, they have to talk to you. The last one is overseas. You might find that there might be some data sovereignty issues when it comes to engaging overseas providers with to store personally identifiable information, such that if they're storing personally identifiable information, they have to sign off that they're aware of Australian privacy law.
Okay.
That's the last little thing to add.
Absolutely, 100%. So Beck hasn't got any more questions. That's a really interesting thing. I think we could talk all day, but we are out of time. We've hit the 1 hour mark, and I'm appreciative of everyone's time and obviously respectful of it. So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
It's been a lot of fun. We're going to get Matt back here. I can tell he's enjoyed it. He's absolutely loved it. It's been a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun here at Best Practice. So please engage more with us. There's a ton of great stuff on the YouTube channel. Jump across and have a look at the Content Security website. They've got a bunch of great information there. I learn a lot, and I'm a novice. Hang on, we got one more question. What's going on here? We have a question.
What are some tips around using a MacBook and Apple products?
Oh.
All right, hang on. Here's the question. Beck's run in. Last question. As an organisation that are Apple advocates here at Best Practice, so what are some tips and tricks for Apple products?
Well, one thing to point out is Apple products, although their marketing might try and say otherwise, are just computers. There's no real difference. Apple products are affected by viruses. They're affected by malware. As I was saying, the piece of malware we were talking about before, they affected Apple products as well. iPhones, you go just do your due diligence and say, have I used a password? Or a fingerprint's usually all right, unless you've got some highly sensitive information on your phone, and making sure you just apply the very same basic principles I was talking about before.
Is there some obviously in the Apple environment there's not as many suppliers for things like antivirus software, those sorts of things. Is there sort of any sort of go-to places like for basic Apple users? I think the other comment I'll just quickly make is that the vast majority of organisations that use Apple products are smaller.
Yes.
So the larger, because they're more expensive, obviously. So is there any sort of go-to places for Apple users?
To be honest, nothing that I'll particularly recommend.
Right. They're all rubbish.
No, just I don't have much experience. As you're saying, a lot of the organisations they're smaller. And I often deal with larger enterprise environment personally. We have seen a lot of Apple products in our penetration testing. But they tend to have very similar issues occur.
Absolutely.
It's just the details different, but the broad strokes are very similar.
Perfect. So the summary, I think broadly the summary is using the hierarchy of controls, so where you can eliminate the need to have information, obviously do that. Obviously engineering controls, eliminating the numbers of people that have got access to stuff, so you're greatly reducing your risk by not giving everyone access to everything, which increases your potential for accidental issues. I think we'll cover that in some more practical tips and tricks. Is that it for questions? Okay, perfect. We're going to hang around here in Best Practice HQ to answer questions. So we're going to monitor the live chat on the website. So if you've got any more questions that you'd like to ask, go right ahead and jump on the Best Practice Certification website, bestpracticecertification.com.au. There's a live chat feature. If you don't want to, or you're a bit worried about the security of our live chat feature here at the Best Practice website, you can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn. I've got a very, very public profile on LinkedIn that's completely unlocked and open to everybody, so you can see everything. Nothing scary there. So connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a direct message, and we can go backwards and forwards. So I'll monitor my LinkedIn account, and that's at Kobe Simat. If you're a Twitter user, we've got best practice certifications there on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter. We'll watch Twitter, we'll watch Facebook, we'll watch LinkedIn for the next hour, answer any questions. But please go check out Content Security. Find Matt on LinkedIn and reach out to him, connect with him so you can watch what he's doing. This guy's going places, as our Content Security. That's what we do here at Best Practice, is we find the people that we can bring to you, which is all really, really exciting. So I just want to say thanks to Jack, thanks to Beck, thanks to June, thanks to Lauren, thanks to Matt, and Marcus, and also Lewis at Content Security for everybody that's been involved in this webinar and bringing it together. It's a much, much bigger tribe for this event, and they're only going to get bigger. And thanks everyone for joining us here at Best Practice TV. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll see us next time, Best Practice TV. Bye for now.